Rain drummed gently against the window as I sat in my daughter's kitchen, the aroma of coffee mingling with the faint scent of lavender from the candle she always kept burning. I had just finished telling her about my long-held dream, a world cruise. My eyes must have glistened with anticipation, my heart fluttering like a teenager's. But she, my daughter, my own flesh and blood, leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms with that familiar look of amused disbelief. "Mom, you're too old to travel alone," she said, her tone that carefully measured blend of concern and condescension. "What if you get sick? What if you lose your passport? What if—" Her words stung more than I cared to admit. Too old. As if my age defined me, as if my years of experience had dulled my sense of adventure instead of sharpening it. I'd raised her to believe in independence, in forging her own path, yet here she was, caging me with her fears. I stirred my coffee, feeling its warmth seep into my palms. My reflection in the dark liquid, a few more lines than before perhaps. A softer jawline, but the same determined eyes, eyes that had weathered storms and still sought out the horizon. "Sweetheart," I said gently, choosing my words like stepping stones across a stream. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time now. I appreciate your worry, but nothing, Mom," she interrupted. "It's not safe. What about your arthritis? Your high blood pressure?" I took a slow breath, letting her words settle. She was worried, I knew that. But she was also projecting her own fears onto me, painting me with the same brush she'd use on someone fragile. I wasn't fragile. I was a woman who had survived heartbreak, loss, and disappointment. I'd built a career, buried a husband, raised a daughter. I'd seen the world, just not all of it. The quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I watched her face, so much like my own, but softer, younger. She'd never understand unless I showed her. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop glowing in the darkness. My finger hovered over the Book Now button. First class, luxury, a world cruise, an audacious dream, the kind that sparks a light in your soul. I thought about my daughter's face when I told her. I thought about the doubts she'd planted in my head, threatening to take root. But I also thought about the girl I once was, fearless, curious, unstoppable. She was still inside me. With a defiant click, I booked the ticket. First class. Around the world. My heart leapt like a bird released from its cage. I wasn't too old. I was just getting started. And so it began. My adventure, my rebellion, my reminder to myself and to her that age is just a number. The sun peeked through my bedroom curtains, bathing the room in a gentle golden glow that felt like a blessing for the day ahead. My suitcase, sleek and navy blue, stood by the door, zipped and ready. I had spent the last 2 weeks meticulously packing and repacking, ensuring that every detail was in order. My favorite evening dress, comfortable walking shoes, a small collection of paperbacks I'd been meaning to read for years. As I zipped up my cardigan and smoothed a hand over my gray-streaked hair, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked every bit the woman I had become. Lines earned from laughter and tears, eyes that had seen both the depths of despair and the peaks of joy. My daughter had insisted on driving me to the port, perhaps as a final attempt to talk me out of it, or at least to have the last word. She hovered at the curb as I handed my ticket to the porter, her brows knit in that way she had when she worried. "Mom," she said, her voice catching just slightly. Please be careful, okay? Promise me you'll call if you need anything, or if you get lost?" I finished for her, a soft smile playing on my lips. "Sweetheart, I've been lost plenty of times. That's how I found myself." She rolled her eyes, but I saw the flicker of pride behind them. She couldn't quite hide it. I turned to take in the grandeur of the ship before me, a floating palace with its gleaming white hull and towering decks. The sun reflected off the polished brass railings, and the sound of laughter and clinking suitcases filled the air. Passengers bustled about with an energy that was contagious. A uniformed crew member offered me a hand as I stepped aboard. "Welcome. Aboard the Odyssey, ma'am," he said with a practiced smile. "Thank you," I replied, my heart swelling with anticipation. The lobby was even more dazzling than I'd imagined. A grand staircase swept upward, flanked by plush carpeting and modern sculptures. A pianist played a gentle melody that floated through the air like a promise of adventure. I felt like a character in a story, a heroine on the verge of transformation. My suite was spacious and inviting, with a king-sized bed, a balcony overlooking the sea, and a small writing desk where I planned to chronicle every twist and turn of this journey. I ran my fingers over the polished wood and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. This was my time. I changed into a flowing sundress and wrapped a scarf around my shoulders before heading out to explore. On the pool deck, people of every shape and size lounged in deck chairs or sipped cocktails, their laughter mingling with the sound of waves. I paused to watch the horizon where the sky met the sea in a seamless line of blue. "First time on a cruise?" A voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find a woman, perhaps in her 50s, wearing oversized sunglasses and a sun hat. Her smile was warm and knowing. "Yes," I admitted, "and first time traveling alone." She laughed, a melodic sound. "You're braver than most. I've done this trip 3 times, and I still get nervous every time we pull away from port." I felt an instant connection, like a bridge had been built between us. "Want to grab a drink?" she asked, gesturing to the bar. I hesitated only a moment before nodding. I'd love that. As we clinked glasses, a crisp white wine for me, a fruity cocktail for her, I felt something shift inside me, a lightness, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. This was it, the start of something big. I had defied the expectations that had weighed on me for so long. I was free, and I was ready. Tomorrow we would set sail, and the world, my world, was waiting. The ship's horn let out a low, resonant blast as we pulled away from the port, and a ripple of excitement shivered through me. I stood on the balcony of my suite, leaning against the polished rail as the land slowly disappeared behind us, a city skyline melting into the horizon, replaced by the vast, infinite ocean. The breeze was cool and salty, carrying with it the scent of adventure. I inhaled deeply, letting the tang of the sea fill my lungs, imagining all the places I would see, the people I would meet, the stories I would collect. My daughter's warnings echoed faintly in my mind, but I brushed them aside like a stray hair. She didn't understand. Maybe someday she would. Inside, the suite glowed with soft, warm light. I changed into a deep blue evening dress, the fabric flowing around me like water, and added a pair of simple earrings that had belonged to my mother. As I pinned them on, I felt a sense of continuity, like I was carrying her with me, along with all the generations of women who had come before me, all of them travelers in their own ways. The main dining hall was a study in elegance, polished, wood, gleaming chandeliers, waiters in crisp uniforms gliding between tables. I felt a small flutter of nerves as I entered, scanning the room for a familiar face. I spotted the woman I'd met earlier, Karen, already seated at a table near the window, waving me over with an enthusiastic smile. "You made it," I called, raising her glass. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. The conversation flowed easily, buoyed by the gentle clinking of cutlery and the low hum of fellow passengers sharing stories and laughter. Karen told me about her 3 previous cruises, the unforgettable sights, the unforgettable people, the occasional seasickness. She'd traveled with her husband the first time, but now came alone, relishing the freedom. "You'd be surprised," she said, sipping her wine, "how many people here are on their own. Solo travelers, widows, divorcees, people who just needed a break from everything. I nodded, feeling that spark of kinship again. The waiter approached with a flourish, presenting the first course, a delicate salad of fresh greens, roasted, beets, and crumbled goat cheese. I took a bite, the flavors crisp and tangy on my tongue, and felt the tension in my shoulders begin to melt away. "Have you planned your excursions yet?" Karen asked, leaning forward, eyes alight. "Not really," I admitted, feeling a twinge of embarrassment. I wanted to see what caught my eye once I was here. Maybe something in Italy, or a walk through the markets in Istanbul. Something that feels authentic. She nodded approvingly. "That's the best way to do it. Let the world surprise you." Her words resonated deeply. Let the world surprise you. That was exactly what I needed. A break from the plans, the routines, the expectations. After dinner, we made our way to the lounge, where a jazz trio played smooth, soulful music. The room glowed with amber light, the air thick with the scent of old wood and expensive perfume. I ordered a brandy, something I hadn't done in years, and let the warmth slide down my throat, spreading a slow, pleasant fire through my chest. As the ship gently rocked beneath us, Karen excused herself to call her grandchildren. I found a seat by the window, watching the moonlight dance on the waves. The music wrapped around me like a soft blanket, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. The night was young, and the sea was vast. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. I woke to the rhythmic thrum of the ship's engines and a soft knock at my door. Sunlight streamed through the balcony curtains, painting the room in warm gold. I stretched, my bones stiff from sleep, but my spirit alight with anticipation. Today, we would dock in Lisbon, a city I'd only read about in glossy travel magazines, its cobbled streets and pastel buildings calling to me like a siren song. After dressing in comfortable slacks and a loose linen blouse, I gathered my small day bag and made my way to the breakfast buffet. The scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air, mingling with the excited chatter of passengers planning their day. I found Karen already at a table by the window, a map spread before her. "Good morning," she greeted, her face glowing with excitement. "Are you ready to explore Lisbon?" I nodded, my heart skipping a beat. I've always dreamed of walking those streets, I confessed, memories of old travel articles and documentaries dancing in my mind. "Perfect," she said, folding the map. "I've booked us on a small group walking tour. No big buses, just us and a local guide. I thought it'd be more authentic." Her thoughtfulness warmed me. It felt good to share this experience with someone, even though I'd started this journey determined to do it alone. Maybe independence didn't have to mean isolation. The gangway bustled with passengers eager to set foot on land, and as we disembarked, the scent of the sea gave way to the sweet aroma of pastries and roasting, chestnuts drifting from street vendors. The city unfolded before us like a living painting. Narrow alleys lined with tiled facades, the occasional tram rattling by, its bright yellow paint shining against the soft pinks and blues of the old buildings. Our guide, a young woman named Sophia with a warm smile and an easy grace, led us through winding streets, past sun-dappled squares where locals sipped coffee and children chased pigeons. Her voice danced with enthusiasm as she shared stories of the city's history, of earthquakes and rebuildings, of explorers who once sailed from these very shores to chart the unknown. As we climbed a steep hill, I paused to catch my breath and take in the view. The red-tiled roofs cascading toward the glittering Tagus River, a whitewashed church steeple rising above the city like a promise. I felt a swell of emotion, gratitude, wonder, maybe even a touch of pride. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Karen said, her eyes reflecting the same awe I felt. "It is," I whispered, almost to myself. "I can't believe I'm really here." She squeezed my arm gently. "We're living the dream, my friend." After the tour, we found a small cafe nestled on a quiet side street. We ordered pastéis de nata, those warm, flaky custard tarts I'd read about, and strong Portuguese coffee. The tart melted in my mouth, sweet and creamy with just the right hint of cinnamon. We lingered there, talking about everything and nothing, our families, our reasons for traveling, our hopes for the journey ahead. I told her about my daughter's doubts, and she shared her own struggles with a son who thought she should be slowing down, not speeding up. Kids, she sighed, rolling her eyes. They don't get it, do they? We're not done yet. I laughed, a sound that felt light and free. No, we're definitely not. When we finally returned to the ship, the sun hung low on the horizon, casting the city in a warm, peach-colored glow. I stood at the railing as we pulled away, watching Lisbon recede into the distance, a place I'd touched, if only briefly, but that had already left its mark on me. In my cabin, I poured a small glass of wine and raised it to the window. To the city beyond, to the journey ahead, I wasn't too old. I was exactly where I needed to be. That night, I was lulled to sleep by the ship's gentle sway, a comforting rhythm that made me feel as if I were cradled in the arms of the ocean itself. But by morning, the movement had shifted. It was no longer gentle but insistent, like a restless child shaking the bed. I opened my eyes to see the curtains rippling, the light outside gray and shifting. I rose carefully, bracing myself against the wall as I crossed to the window. The sky was a tapestry of steely clouds, the sea below restless and churning. Whitecaps danced across the surface like frantic dancers. The Odyssey, so regal and steady yesterday, now felt fragile, a toy boat bobbing in a vast, indifferent sea. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Karen, looking pale but determined. "Morning," she said, clutching the doorframe for balance. "Rough one today." I nodded, swallowing a wave of nausea that rose unbidden. "Looks that way. They've canceled some of the day's activities," she said. "Figured I'd check in on you." "Thank you," I said, touched by her concern. It was easy to forget sometimes that even the most independent travelers still needed someone to lean on. "Want to grab breakfast? Or at least try?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, let's go." The dining hall was quieter than usual, passengers gripping coffee cups and clutching napkins like lifelines. Plates rattled in the servers' hands as they navigated the lurching deck. I ordered dry toast and weak tea, hoping to calm the rebellious storm in my stomach. Karen, ever the optimist, attempted a smile. "This too shall pass, right?" I managed a small laugh, though my face felt tight. "Right. We'll be laughing about this tomorrow." Between bites of toast, I watched the sea through the window, gray and restless, yet strangely beautiful. The ship rose and fell in a slow, deliberate rhythm, like a living creature breathing. I closed my eyes, focusing on that rhythm, letting it steady me. After breakfast, we retreated to the library, a quiet refuge lined with books and overstuffed chairs. The ship's gentle creaks and groans were a constant reminder of the storm outside, but here, among the scent of old pages and polished wood, I found a sense of calm. Karen settled into a chair with a mystery novel, while I wandered the shelves, my fingers grazing the spines of books I'd never read, and some I'd read a dozen times. One volume caught my eye, a collection of travel essays by a woman who had circled the globe alone. I pulled it down, the pages worn and comforting, and sank into a chair by the window. As I read, I found myself captivated by her words, the challenges she'd faced, the friendships she'd formed, the small moments of grace she'd discovered in unexpected places. Her journey felt like a mirror of my own, though the names and dates differed. A sudden lurch of the ship brought me back to the present, the book slipping from my hands. I grabbed the armrest and took a deep breath. "You okay?" Karen asked, looking up from her book. I nodded, though my heart pounded. "I'm okay," I said, "just writing it out." She smiled knowingly. "We're stronger than we think." Hours passed in a slow rhythm, reading, sipping tea, sharing stories in low voices that felt intimate and safe. The storm outside raged on, but within these walls, we were cocooned, finding comfort in each other's presence. By late afternoon, the sea began to calm. The sky outside softened to a muted blue, and the ship's rocking eased to a gentle sway. Passengers began to emerge from their cabins, some pale, others triumphant, all with the same look of relief. Karen and I returned to the deck, where the air was cool and briny, carrying the promise of clearer days ahead. We stood together in silence, watching the horizon brighten. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for being here." She squeezed my hand. "Always." In that moment, I realized that even on a journey, I'd started to prove my independence. Companionship was a gift, a reminder that we're never truly alone, even in the roughest of seas. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the water, I felt a new resolve settle in my chest. I wasn't just proving something to my daughter, I was discovering something for myself. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sea that shimmered like liquid silver under the morning sun. The sky was a brilliant blue, cloudless and wide, stretching out toward an endless horizon. I stood on my balcony, a gentle breeze tugging at my hair, and let the sunlight wash over me. The last remnants of nausea were gone, replaced by a calm I hadn't felt in years. Today, I decided, I would write to my daughter. Not just a postcard or a hurried email, but a real letter, a way to share this journey with her, to bridge the gap between the woman who had raised her and the woman she now thought was too old to live her own dreams. I settled at the small writing desk in my cabin, the sea visible through the glass doors. My pen hovered over the crisp white paper as I gathered my thoughts. "Dear Emily," I began, the words feeling formal and intimate all at once. I wrote slowly, carefully choosing each word. I told her about Lisbon, the colors, the cobblestones, the music drifting from open windows. I described the taste of pastel de nata, the laughter I'd shared with Karen, the feeling of standing at the top of a hill and seeing the city stretch out before me like a tapestry. I told her about the storm, how it had tested me, but also how it had shown me something important, that even when the world feels uncertain, I am stronger than I thought. I admitted that I'd been afraid at times, not of the sea, but of letting go of the safety net she thought she was giving me. I wanted her to know that I wasn't trying to prove her wrong. I was trying to prove to myself that my life was still mine to live. As I wrote, tears blurred the page, but I let them fall. They were tears of release, of honesty, of love. When I finished, I set the letter aside and let the ink dry, feeling a weight lift from my chest. I realized that I wasn't just writing to her. I was writing to the version of myself who had been too afraid to take risks, too content to stay in her comfort zone. Later that morning, I carried the letter down to the ship's small post office, where a kindly clerk promised it would find its way to Emily. As I handed it over, I felt a rush of relief and a twinge of anticipation. I hoped she would understand, that she would see my journey not as a rebellion, but as a celebration of the life she'd helped me build. I wandered the decks afterward, the sea breeze light on my skin. Couples held hands, children squealed with delight as they chased each other, and older passengers reclined with books in hand, their faces relaxed and content. I found Karen by the pool, sunglasses perched on her nose, a dog-eared novel in her lap. "How'd it go?" she asked, peering over the pages. "I wrote to Emily," I said, smiling faintly. "I wanted her to know why I'm here." Karen nodded, her eyes soft. "She's lucky to have a mother like you." I sank into the chair beside her, letting the warmth of the sun soak into my bones. "I hope she sees it that way," I murmured. "She will," Karen said. "Sometimes they just need time." We sat together in companionable silence, the ship humming with the gentle sounds of life. In that moment, I felt both small and vast, a single traveler on an ocean of stories connected by invisible threads to everyone I'd ever loved. The horizon stretched before us, wide and open. Tomorrow, we'd reach Barcelona, a city I'd only ever seen in photographs. I thought of all the winding streets waiting to be explored, the meals to be savored, the laughter to be shared. I was ready for whatever the world had in store. Barcelona greeted us with a warmth that felt like a welcome home. The sun was already high by the time I disembarked, casting the city in a vibrant glow. Palm trees lined the bustling boulevard, their fronds swaying in the gentle breeze. The mandir, scent of salt and tapas, mixed with the sounds of laughter, clinking glasses, and distant music drifting from open cafes. Karen and I had agreed to explore separately that day, each of us wanting to follow our own curiosity. She had her heart set on an art tour, Picasso, Miro, Gaudí, while I felt drawn to the labyrinthine alleys of the Gothic Quarter, where history seemed to seep from every cobblestone. I walked slowly, my sandals clicking against the worn stones. The narrow streets curved and twisted, revealing hidden plazas and tiny shops filled with handmade jewelry, leather goods, and colorful ceramics. Locals bustled by, some on bicycles, others carrying baskets of fresh produce or chatting animatedly in rapid-fire Spanish. I paused at a small cafe nestled between two ancient buildings, its wrought iron chairs bathed in sunlight. A guitarist played softly nearby, the notes of a Spanish ballad weaving through the air like a secret. I ordered a café con leche and a slice of tortilla española, savoring the rich flavors and the sense of being utterly present. At a table, nearby, an elderly couple sat close together, their hands intertwined, their heads bent in quiet conversation. I watched them for a moment, imagining their story. Decades of shared meals, whispered promises, perhaps even losses that had only strengthened their bond. A twinge of loneliness touched me then, but it was quickly replaced by gratitude. I'd had love once, too, a love that had lasted until life intervened, taking my husband too soon. The memories of our travels together, the laughter, the arguments, the small gestures of kindness, floated back to me, warming me from the inside. Finished my coffee and continued walking, the streets unfolding like a treasure map. At the cathedral, I stood in awe of the intricate facades, every stone a testament to centuries of faith and craftsmanship. I lit a candle for him, for me, for all the unfinished conversations between us. In the afternoon, I wandered into a small, artisan shop where the owner, a woman with kind eyes and hands stained with paint, showed me her latest creations, ceramic tiles, each one telling a story. I chose a small piece depicting a sailboat on a blue sea, a perfect memento of this voyage. By the time I returned to the ship, the sun was dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I found Karen on the deck, a wide-brimmed hat shielding her from the last rays. She looked up and smiled. "Have fun?" she asked. "More than I imagined," I replied, settling into the chair beside her. We shared our day's adventures, swapping stories of art and music, of local markets and unexpected kindnesses. The laughter came easily, like a bridge between us. As the ship pulled away from the port, I stood at the railing, the city slowly receding. I felt a pang of sadness at leaving it behind, but it was a sweet sadness, like the closing of a beloved book. This journey was teaching me something I hadn't expected, that every goodbye was also an invitation to the next hello. And in that moment, as Barcelona's lights winked at me from the distance, I promised myself I would never let fear keep me from saying yes to the world again. The following days passed in a gentle rhythm, a dance between sea and shore, between independence and camaraderie. Each port offered its own flavor, its own lessons. In Marseille, I wandered through markets brimming with lavender and olives. In Monte Carlo, I marveled at luxury I could scarcely imagine, the super yachts bobbing like giant white swans. Yet, even amid all the grandeur, it was the human connections that left the deepest impression on me. On the fifth night at sea, I found myself at a wine tasting in one of the ship's more intimate lounges. The event was hosted by a sommelier with a thick Italian accent and a twinkle in his eye, his passion for wine evident in every gesture. Karen was there too, but she'd met some friends and drifted off to chat with them, leaving me to navigate this new experience on my own. I felt a pang of self-consciousness at first, but then a man in his early 60s sat down beside me. He wore a navy blazer and had a neatly trimmed beard, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat. "Of course not," I replied, offering a smile. We introduced ourselves. His name was Michael from Chicago, retired after a long career in engineering. Like me, he was traveling alone, finding solace in the quiet hum of the ship and the steady rhythm of new places. We tasted wines from France, Spain, and Italy, each sip a window into a different landscape. Michael had a gift for weaving stories into each pour, and soon I found myself laughing, my nerves forgotten. "You know," he said, swirling his glass thoughtfully, "I've always wanted to do a trip like this, but I was waiting for the right time. After my wife passed last year, I realized that time doesn't wait for us." His honesty startled me, yet I understood it immediately. I raised my glass, meeting his eyes. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said softly. "I know what that's like." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the ship's gentle sway and the low hum of conversation around us like a comforting blanket. "It's funny," he continued, his voice steady, "how life keeps giving us chances to start over, even when we think we're done." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "It is, and I think maybe it's never too late to choose a different ending." The conversation shifted after that, lighter now, as if we'd both acknowledged a deeper truth. We compared notes on our travels, his stories of hiking in the Rockies, my tales of Lisbon's pastel streets and Barcelona's labyrinth of alleys. We shared recommendations for books, our favorite meals on board, the simple joys of watching the sun melt into the ocean each night. As the evening wore on, the sommelier bid us good night, and the other passengers drifted off. Michael and I lingered, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. "Thank you," he said finally, his smile warm, "for the conversation. It's nice to talk to someone who gets it." I felt the same. "It is," I agreed. "Maybe we'll bump into each other again before the cruise is over." "I'd like that," he said, his eyes twinkling. As I returned to my cabin, the hallways quiet and the sea a gentle lullaby outside my window, I realized that the world wasn't just about places. It was about people too, strangers who crossed our path at just the right moment, offering companionship when we needed it most. Maybe I wasn't traveling alone after all. Maybe no one ever truly was. The Odyssey pulled into port at dawn, the soft pink glow of sunrise spilling over the ancient city of Naples. The harbor was alive with fishing boats and ferries, their horns echoing through the early morning haze. I leaned over the railing, breathing in the scent of salt and diesel, watching as the city slowly awoke. Karen and I had planned an excursion together, a guided tour through Naples' old quarters, with a stop at a small family-run trattoria for lunch. After days of navigating the ship's routine and the occasional loneliness of solo travel, it felt comforting to have a plan, to share a piece of this journey with a friend. We met near the gangway, both of us wearing comfortable shoes and light jackets to guard against the morning chill. Karen's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Ready for some real Italian food?" she asked, linking her arm through mine as we walked toward the bus. "More than ready," I laughed. "And maybe a bit of wine to go with it." Our guide, a middle-aged woman named Elena, welcomed us aboard with the enthusiasm of someone who truly loved her city. As we wound through Naples' narrow streets, she narrated stories of its tumultuous history, volcanoes and invasions, art and architecture, all woven together into a tapestry of resilience. We stopped at a small church, its stone facade worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Inside, candles flickered in the shadows, their soft glow dancing across the ancient frescoes. I paused to light one, the flame trembling in the drafty air. For my husband, for Emily, for me. Outside, the city bustled with life. Vendors shouting, their wares, motorbikes zipping between cars, the air thick with the scent of espresso and frying dough. I marveled at the energy of it all, so different from the quiet corners of my own neighborhood back home. Elena led us down a twisting alley to the trattoria, its wooden door marked by a hand-painted sign that promised Cucina Casalinga, homemade, cooking. Inside, the room was cozy and filled with the aroma of simmering tomato sauce and fresh herbs. A plump woman in a flowered apron greeted us with a smile that felt like a warm embrace. We were seated at a long wooden table set with mismatched plates and glasses. Conversation buzzed around us in a mix of English and Italian, laughter punctuating the air like music. I felt at home in a way I hadn't expected. The first course arrived. A simple plate of spaghetti al pomodoro, the sauce bright and tangy, the pasta perfectly tender. I closed my eyes after the first bite, savoring the burst of flavors that felt like a love letter to the senses. Karen moaned in delight. "I may never eat pasta anywhere else again," she declared, twirling another forkful. I laughed. I feel the same way. As we ate, I noticed Michael a few tables away, deep in conversation with another solo traveler, a woman with short gray hair and a quick laugh. He caught my eye and raised his glass in greeting, and I returned the gesture, warmth blossoming in my chest. After lunch, we had free time to explore. Karen wandered off in search of a market she'd heard about, while I chose to sit in a small piazza with a gelato in hand, watching the world go by. Children chased pigeons, a young couple shared a quiet conversation on a bench, an old man played a battered accordion with the kind of tenderness that comes from a lifetime of music. I thought of all the days I'd spent worrying about what I couldn't do, all the times I'd let my age define my limits. But here I was, in the heart of Naples, eating gelato and feeling more alive than I had in years. When it was time to return to the ship, I felt a pang of reluctance, but also a sense of anticipation. There were more cities to come, more meals to share, more moments of discovery waiting just over the horizon. As the Odyssey set sail that evening, I stood at the railing, the lights of Naples winking at me in the distance. My heart felt full, with memories, with laughter, with a quiet sense of triumph. Maybe my daughter had been right to worry, but I'd learned that worry couldn't keep me from living. And that night, as the sea rocked me gently to sleep, I dreamed not of the past, but of the journey still ahead. The morning after we left Naples, the Odyssey was at sea again, gliding through calm waters beneath a sky the color of porcelain. I woke early, the hush of dawn pressing in around me. My balcony beckoned, promising a quiet place to sip coffee and gather my thoughts. As I stepped outside, the horizon stretched in every direction, infinite and inviting. A few other passengers wandered the decks, wrapped in scarves and jackets, their breath visible in the cool air. The solitude felt comforting, a reminder that even amid the crowds, we were all on our own journeys. After breakfast, I wandered the ship's art gallery, the walls lined with paintings and photographs from every corner of the world. One piece caught my eye, a watercolor of a woman standing on a cliff's edge, her arms open to the wind. There was something in her posture, hopeful, defiant, that reminded me of myself. I bought a small print of it, thinking it would make the perfect Souvenir. Later, in my cabin, I sat at the writing desk and pulled out my travel journal. My pen moved across the page, recording every detail. The soft clink of wine glasses in Naples, the way the sun turned the sea to gold, the laughter that had become a constant companion. I paused to sketch the watercolor woman, her hair streaming, behind her like a banner of freedom. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Karen, her expression anxious. "Hey," she said, her voice low. "There's a message for you at the front desk. They tried to call your room." My stomach tightened. A message. I hadn't expected any calls. Emily, maybe? I hurried down the corridor, the ship's gentle sway making my steps uncertain. At the front desk, the young woman behind the counter smiled apologetically and handed me a note. "Please call your daughter as soon as possible. Urgent." My heart thudded in my chest. Emily. I found a quiet corner near the library and dialed the number, my hands trembling. It felt surreal to be making such a call from the middle of the sea. The line rang twice before she answered, her voice tight with worry. "Mom? Emily, what's wrong?" She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I heard the fear, the frustration, the love she didn't always know how to express. "It's Dad's house," she blurted out. "There was a small fire in the garage. The firefighters said it was electrical, but it's contained. No one's hurt. I didn't know what to do. I panicked, I guess. Relief flooded me, but it tangled with something else, a complicated mix of guilt and protectiveness. I hadn't expected to feel so far away from home, so disconnected. "Sweetheart, I'm glad you called," I said softly, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to help." "No," she said quickly. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said you were too old to travel. I was scared of being left behind, I think." Her words cracked something inside me. "Oh, Emily," I whispered. "You're never going to lose me. I'm just finding myself again." We both fell silent, the miles between us heavy but filled with understanding. "When will you be home?" she asked finally. "In a few weeks," I said, "and I can't wait to see you. I have so many stories to share." "I want to hear them all," she said. "Be safe, okay? And have fun. You deserve this." We said goodbye, and I ended the call, staring at the phone in my hand. The ache in my chest was sharp, but somehow comforting. She understood now. Maybe she'd never fully grasp it, but at least she was trying. I slipped the phone into my bag and stood, feeling the deck steady. Beneath my feet, the sea stretched out ahead of me, vast and unknowable, and I felt my heart lift with the promise of the days still to come. Back in my cabin, I picked up the watercolor print. The woman in the painting seemed to look back at me with a knowing smile. I smiled back, tracing the lines of her hair, her open arms. Yes, I thought, I'm exactly where I need to be. The days that followed my call with Emily blurred into a soft haze of sunshine, laughter, and the comforting rhythm of life at sea. Each morning, I woke with a sense of gratitude, a quiet contentment that settled over me like a favorite sweater. Filled my days with small pleasures, a yoga class on the deck, an afternoon spent sketching in the library, long conversations with Karen about everything from books to grandkids to what it meant to grow older on your own terms. Michael and I continued to cross paths too, sharing coffee in the lounge, comparing notes on our shore excursions. There was an easy comfort in his presence. No pressure, just two travelers sharing a stretch of road. The ship's final night at sea arrived all too quickly. The farewell dinner, a tradition marking the end of the journey. I stood before the mirror in my cabin, smoothing the fabric of a navy blue dress I'd saved for this very evening. My hair, streaked with silver, glowed softly in the light, and I couldn't help but smile at my reflection. I felt like a woman who had reclaimed a piece of herself. The dining room was a scene of elegance, alive with conversation and the soft clink of glasses. White linens, sparkling silverware, and delicate flower arrangements adorned every table. Passengers gathered in groups, some hugging new friends goodbye, others promising to keep in touch. Karen waved me over, her eyes bright with anticipation. "You look fabulous," she said, taking my hand. "You too," I replied, squeezing it. "I can't believe it's almost over." "I know," she said, her smile tinged with a hint of sadness. "But what a ride, right?" Michael joined us a moment later, dressed in a crisp suit that made him look both dignified and at ease. "Ladies," he said, raising his glass in a small toast, "to unexpected adventures and new friends." "To new friends," I echoed, clinking my glass against his. The first course arrived, a delicate salad of heirloom tomatoes and mozzarella, drizzled with balsamic. The flavors were simple but perfect, each bite reminding me that sometimes the most memorable things were the ones we almost overlooked. As we moved on to the main course, conversation turned reflective. Karen talked about the solo trips she'd taken after her husband died, how every journey had taught her something about herself. Michael shared stories of his engineering days, his face lighting up with each memory. I listened, absorbing every word, feeling the threads that connected us, threads of resilience, loss, hope, and the quiet triumph of living life on our own terms. When dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate cake that felt like a celebration in itself, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment, letting the hum of voices and the gentle sway of the ship fill me. I thought of Emily. I hoped she could see me now, sitting here, not just surviving, but thriving. I hoped she'd understand that age was never a reason to stop seeking wonder. As the evening wound down, the ship's captain made a small speech thanking us for sharing the journey. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made me blink back tears. May the memories you've made here inspire you to keep exploring wherever life takes you. After the applause, Michael turned to me, his expression earnest. "You know," he said, "you've inspired me. I've been thinking about places I never dared to visit before. Africa, maybe, or the Galapagos." I laughed, my heart swelling. "Then promise me you'll go," I said. "Promise me you won't wait." He raised his glass. "Promise," Karen beamed. "Here's to not waiting." And in that moment, as laughter and conversation swirled around me, I realized that this trip had given me more than memories of cities and seas. It had given me a new sense of belonging to the world, to myself, and to the people I'd met along the way. Tomorrow we'd dock. I'd go home with souvenirs and photographs, sure, but more importantly, I'd go home with a heart brimming with stories, each one a reminder that the journey was far from over. Morning came softly. The horizon brushed with rose and gold as the Odyssey glided into port. The ship vibrated with a quiet urgency. Suitcases lined the hallways, passengers hurried about with last-minute packing and bittersweet goodbyes. I stood at my balcony one last time, coffee in hand, watching the city come into view. It felt like both an ending and a beginning. A sense of anticipation hummed through me, mingled with the wistful ache of leaving something beautiful behind. Karen knocked at my door, her face bright, but eyes a little puffy. "Can you believe it's over?" she asked, her voice a blend of disbelief and resignation. "It's not over," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "It's just different now," she smiled. "I'll take that, and I'll be calling you, you know. We've got museums to explore. Back home, I wouldn't have it any other way," I said, hugging her tight. We disembarked together, suitcases trailing behind us. The port was bustling, filled with taxi drivers calling out destinations and families reuniting with loved ones. I inhaled deeply, the crisp morning air tinged with the scent of salt and the city's promise of possibility. Michael appeared beside us, his navy blazer replaced by a comfortable windbreaker. "Ladies," he greeted with a smile, his eyes crinkling. "Any chance of exchanging emails? I'd love to hear about your next adventure." Absolutely, I said, pulling a pen from my bag. I scribbled my contact details on a scrap of paper and handed it to him. Don't forget to send me a photo from the Galapagos. He grinned. Deal. We shook hands, a quiet understanding passing between us. Different journeys, maybe, but the same sense of hope. Karen's son came to collect. Her, a tall man with her eyes and an easy smile. As they walked away, she turned to wave. Until next time, she called. I waved back, my heart full. A taxi driver took my suitcase and held the door open. As I settled in, I glanced at my phone and saw a new message from Emily. Can't wait to hear everything. Dinner's on me tonight. Love you, Mom. I felt tears prick my eyes. Good tears, the kind that come from knowing you're loved and understood. I typed back, love you too, sweetheart, and I have so much to tell you. The taxi pulled away from the port, weaving through streets that felt both familiar and new. I watched the city slide past, each building a reminder that the world was waiting, just as it always had been. I thought of Lisbon's cobbled alleys, the pastel skies of Barcelona, the taste of gelato in Naples. I thought of the stormy sea, the laughter over dinners, the conversations that had sparked something inside me I hadn't realized I'd lost. Most of all, I thought of the woman who had booked a luxury world cruise to prove, to herself and to everyone else, that age wasn't a cage, but a doorway. A woman who had chosen to live on her own terms, no matter how many birthdays had passed. As the taxi turned toward home, I felt a smile bloom on my face. My adventure wasn't over. It had just begun. And somewhere deep inside, I promised myself I would never stop seeking the horizon.